What happens when two legends from completely different worlds collide in front of millions of viewers, and it turns into the most shocking moment in late-night television history? A moment so explosive, it has the power to shift the entire landscape of entertainment. Picture this. Reba McEntire, the undisputed queen of country music, steps onto The Tonight Show, ready to promote her new album and share her decades of wisdom. And then there's Jimmy Fallon, the charismatic late-night host, known for his easygoing banter and Hollywood charm. What should have been a fun, laid-back conversation suddenly spirals into something far more intense, something that no one saw coming. A question, seemingly innocent, ignites a firestorm, and within seconds, two of entertainment's biggest figures lock horns in a confrontation that leaves the audience stunned and the world questioning everything. What started as a promotional interview quickly transforms into a battle of ideals, a war of words where respect, integrity, and authenticity take center stage. Why did this happen? Why did a simple question lead to one of the most talked-about moments in television history? What was it that pushed the boundaries so far that the queen of country music walked out of the studio, leaving millions of viewers in shock? Buckle up. What you're about to witness isn't just an interview gone wrong. It's a collision of two worlds, two powerful forces, and two completely different perspectives on what it means to be in the spotlight. This is the moment that redefined what we thought we knew about late-night television, and it's only just beginning. It was supposed to be a routine appearance, just another day at The Tonight Show, a chance for Reba McEntire to sit down, chat about her latest album, and maybe share a laugh with Jimmy Fallon. After all, the audience was packed with fans. The cameras were rolling, and the music was ready to play. Reba McEntire, one of the most accomplished and revered voices in country music, stepped onto the stage like she always does, commanding the room. Her signature red hair shimmered under the lights, her presence undeniable. She waved at the audience, greeting them with that warm smile that has made her a household name across generations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the legendary Reba McEntire. Jimmy's voice boomed across the studio, his enthusiasm spilling over as the crowd erupted in applause. The air was thick with anticipation, the audience buzzing with excitement. Reba made her way to the seat, her every step radiating confidence and poise. Jimmy stood up, arms outstretched, ready to give her the customary hug. The exchange was warm, cordial, nothing out of the ordinary. But behind the smiles, something was about to shift. The tension in the air, barely perceptible at first, was growing, as though the calm before a storm. Reba settled into the chair, but there was something different about her today. Something that told you this wasn't going to be your usual light-hearted banter. There was a quiet strength in her, a sense of purpose that wouldn't go unnoticed. Jimmy dove into the conversation with his signature enthusiasm. "You look amazing, Reba. How are you feeling?" "I'm doing wonderful, Jimmy. Thank you so much for having me back," Reba replied, her smile lighting up the room. But beneath that warmth, there was an undercurrent of something far more serious, something the audience couldn't quite put their finger on yet. At first, it felt like business as usual. Jimmy praised her new album, calling it incredible. Reba, ever the gracious guest, thanked him, but she wasn't just here to talk about her music. She wasn't just here to be another celebrity promoting their latest project. No, today she had a bigger message to deliver. And that's when Jimmy asked the question that would change everything. "Tell us about the inspiration behind this album, Reba. What's been driving your music lately?" It seemed like an innocent enough question. After all, who wouldn't want to know about the creative process behind a legend's latest work? But when Reba answered, she didn't just talk about melodies or lyrics. No, she dug deeper. "This album is about authenticity," she said, her voice steady, but with an edge to it that wasn't there before. "It's about telling real stories. It's about connecting with people through genuine emotions. Because in today's world, we've lost some of that. We've lost what it means to be real." The room fell silent for a moment. Reba's words lingered, resonating with a truth that everyone in the room felt but couldn't articulate. Jimmy nodded along, clearly moved by her sincerity. "I couldn't agree more," Jimmy responded, his tone softening as he understood the weight of her message. But instead of letting it sit, he pushed forward. And speaking of authenticity, there's been a lot of talk lately about country artists and their political views. Do you think that influences their music, or the way their fans see them? It wasn't an unexpected question. Political discussions were making waves across all industries. But as soon as the words left Jimmy's mouth, Reba's expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. The warmth in her smile wavered for a moment before she spoke. Well, Jimmy, I've always believed that music should bring people together, not divide them. My job is to entertain, to tell stories that resonate with people, no matter what their personal beliefs are. The tone of her voice was firm now, controlled, but there was something more, something that told the audience this wasn't going to be another conversation about music. This was going to be about something much bigger. And Jimmy didn't realize it, but he had just opened a door that was about to lead them down a path they couldn't turn back from. Jimmy, ever the curious host, wasn't content to let the conversation simmer on the surface. He leaned in, the gears in his mind turning. But don't you think as artists we have a responsibility? A responsibility to speak out on the big issues? To use our platform to influence change? Reba's eyes tightened ever so slightly and the audience could feel it. That shift, the subtle but undeniable change in the air. Jimmy's question was innocent enough, but to Reba, it seemed like a challenge. He had stepped too far into territory she wasn't ready to navigate. She paused for a long moment before answering, her voice low but filled with conviction. Jimmy, I've been doing this for over 40 years. And in all that time, I've learned one thing for sure. When you start telling people how to think, how to vote, you're no longer respecting them. You're telling them what to believe instead of letting them think for themselves. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Reba wasn't just answering a question, she was making a statement. She wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Jimmy, caught off guard by her response, nodded but pressed on, his voice light as if to keep things playful. But surely there are some things that are black and white, right? Some things that we all know are just wrong. Like what? Reba asked, her tone cool, now fully aware that this wasn't going to be a friendly back and forth. This was turning into a battle of principles, and she wasn't going to lose. Jimmy, seemingly unaware of the intensity that was building, dove deeper. Social justice, climate change, equality. These are all human issues, not political ones, don't you think? Reba's eyes darkened just for a split second. She leaned forward, her voice firm. You're oversimplifying things, Jimmy. Life isn't as black and white as you want it to be. There's a lot more complexity to these issues than people give credit for. There are good, smart people on all sides of these debates, and they deserve to have their voices heard too. The tension in the room was palpable now. The audience sat frozen, watching two titans of entertainment go head to head, their once amicable conversation transforming into something raw, something real. But Jimmy wasn't done. He leaned in, and the words that came out were pointed, almost accusatory. I just find it interesting, Reba, that someone with your platform, your influence, chooses to stay neutral. Some might say that's a privilege that not everyone can afford. It was the kind of statement that made the studio hold its breath. Reba's eyes flashed, her expression hardening. This wasn't a conversation anymore, it was a challenge. And Jimmy had just thrown the first punch. Her voice, calm but piercing, responded. Privilege, Jimmy? Let me tell you about privilege. Privilege is sitting behind a desk in a multi-million-dollar studio, surrounded by writers and producers who tell you exactly what to say. Privilege is getting to lecture people who have worked their entire lives to build a career from nothing. The audience was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Jimmy tried to backtrack, sensing the dangerous ground he was treading on, but it was already too late. The battle lines had been drawn. No, I'm not lecturing, Jimmy protested weakly. I'm just asking tough questions. But Reba wasn't having it. Jimmy, she said slowly, her voice growing colder, you're not asking questions. You're making accusations. You're suggesting that because I don't broadcast my every political opinion, I'm somehow failing my fans. Her words were like a cold slap. and the tension in the room went from uncomfortable to excruciating. The friendly, late-night interview had turned into something far more intense, and now there was no turning back. The words were out now. The gloves were off. Jimmy tried to steady himself, his famous smile faltering as the moment took on an almost surreal quality. He wasn't just up against a guest. He was up against a woman who had spent decades standing her ground, someone who had been through hell and back, who had built an empire on the very principles Jimmy was questioning. "I think you're misunderstanding me." "Reba," Jimmy stammered, trying to salvage the interview. "I'm just saying that in times like these, silence can be interpreted as complicity." The words hit Reba like a hammer. The room went still. "Silence," Reba repeated slowly, her voice growing more intense. "Let me tell you something about silence, Jimmy. Sometimes silence is wisdom. Sometimes silence is respecting other people's right to think for themselves. Sometimes silence is knowing when to keep your mouth shut and not lecture people you don't even know about things you don't understand." Her words were sharp, each one cutting deeper than the last. Jimmy, the host, the golden boy of late-night television, had underestimated the queen of country music. And now he was paying the price. Reba stood, her posture now commanding, the full force of her presence filling the room. She wasn't just an artist anymore. She was an icon, a force to be reckoned with. "You want to talk about privilege, Jimmy?" Her voice was booming now. "Privilege is thinking that because you sit behind a desk and crack jokes, you have the right to tell me how to think or how to speak." Jimmy tried to counter, but his words were weak, fumbling. Reba's gaze never wavered. "You think you understand what it's like to be me, to stand in my shoes?" She continued. "To have your every move scrutinized, to have your voice reduced to something for others to control?" The audience was silent now, the weight of Reba's words filling the air. This wasn't just about a celebrity interview. This was about standing up for one's principles, for one's right to be heard without being dictated to. The studio was electric now. Every eye in the room was on Reba, who stood tall, her entire presence radiating an undeniable power. She wasn't just holding her ground. She was taking command of the room, of the narrative. Jimmy, for all his wit and charm, seemed small next to her. He fumbled for words, trying to regain control, but the moment was slipping from his grasp. "You know what I think, Jimmy?" Reba's voice was sharp now, unwavering. "You've spent the last few minutes trying to shame me for not fitting into your narrow view of what artists should be doing. I'm not your political puppet. I'm not here to parrot the latest talking points that come from Hollywood or wherever else you think the truth resides." Jimmy's face flushed a deep red, but he couldn't back down. "I'm not shaming you, Reba," he said, his voice shaky. "I just think in a time like this, with everything that's going on, artists should be using their platforms for something bigger than just music. Something more important." But Reba was done with the games. Her next words were a powerful slap to the face of everything Jimmy had been trying to argue. "You know what I think, Jimmy?" she said, her voice rising now. "I think you're so caught up in your idea of what I should be doing that you've forgotten what it really means to be an artist. I make music to connect with people, to give them something real to hold on to. I'm not here to make political statements. I'm here to make music that heals, that brings people together, no matter where they stand on anything. That is my responsibility." There it was. The ultimate truth. Reba wasn't just standing up for herself. She was standing up for all the fans who came to her concerts not to be lectured, but to escape the noise, to find solace, to feel heard in a world that often ignores them. The audience, silent until now, seemed to collectively hold its breath. They didn't know whether to cheer or stay quiet, but they all felt it. The sheer force of Reba's conviction, the power of her words. At this point, even Jimmy seemed to realize he had crossed a line. He opened his mouth to apologize, but instead of diffusing the situation, he only poured fuel on the fire. "I think you're overreacting, Reba. I'm not attacking you. I'm just asking the tough questions, the ones people want to know the answers to." His words were weak, hollow, like an echo of the confident late-night host everyone was used to seeing. But Reba wasn't buying it. "Overreacting?" she repeated, her voice now ice-cold. "You've been attacking my character for the last 10 minutes, Jimmy. You've been trying to shame me for not conforming to your idea of what an artist should be, and now you call me overreacting? No, Jimmy. What I'm doing is standing up for myself. Standing up for the millions of fans who come to my shows for something other than division. For something real. Jimmy's attempt at regaining control only made the situation worse. He tried to smooth things over, to ease the tension. But it was clear. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a joke or a quick shift to the next topic. He looked to the audience, clearly trying to salvage whatever dignity he could. Let's move on, okay? Let's get back to the music. But the damage was done. Reba wasn't backing down, and everyone in the room knew it. Then came the moment that would leave an indelible mark on late-night television. Reba, calm and collected, made her decision. She stood up from her seat, straightening her back as she prepared to leave. The silence in the studio was deafening. Every camera was trained on her, and you could feel the collective gasp of the audience as they realized what was happening. "Reba, don't," Jimmy pleaded, his voice cracking for the first time. "Please, let's just talk about this." But Reba didn't stop. She didn't hesitate. Her heels clicked on the studio floor as she walked toward the exit, the weight of every step echoing in the room. Before she reached the door, she paused, turning to face Jimmy one last time. The look in her eyes was a mixture of disappointment and resolve. The kind of look that said, "I tried to make you understand, but you didn't listen. Next time you want to have a political debate, invite a politician," she said, her voice carrying the full weight of her disappointment. "When you invite an artist, try showing some respect for what we do and why we do it." With that, she walked out of the studio, her head held high, her dignity intact, leaving Jimmy Fallon standing behind his desk, a shadow of his former self. The impact of Reba's walkout was immediate. Social media exploded. Fans, critics, and celebrities alike weighed in, all with their own takes on what had just happened. Some hailed Reba for standing her ground, for not letting herself be silenced or diminished. Others criticized her for walking out, arguing that she could have used the moment to explain her views. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just another celebrity interview. It was a defining moment, one that would be talked about for years to come. A moment where two entertainment icons clashed, and one walked away with her integrity, her strength, and her message intact. So, what can we take from this confrontation? What does this moment really mean, beyond the headlines and the shock value? It's simple. Reba McEntire wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for all of us. She was fighting for the right to remain true to herself, to her fans, and to the values that had gotten her to where she was in the first place. She wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how powerful, push her into a corner, make her conform, or tell her how to speak her truth. In the end, Reba taught us all something valuable, the power of staying authentic in a world that constantly asks you to compromise. The strength to stand firm, even when the world around you is demanding something different. And the courage to walk away when the cost of staying is too high. Now it's your turn. Have you ever felt like you had to stand your ground, even when the pressure to conform was overwhelming? What moments have tested your integrity and your beliefs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your story, because we all have something to learn from one another. And if you believe, like Reba, that authenticity and respect are worth fighting for, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This is just the beginning of a movement. Join us as we continue to explore the stories that remind us of who we are and what we stand for. Are you ready to take your own stand?